Hi there. It's 12 noon in New York, 5 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. in Nigeria. It's 7 p.m. in Qatar and midnight in Singapore. Hello, good day, and welcome to After 5 at 5. After 5 at 5 is a live conversation with leaders around the world following a recorded conversation on YouTube, Make or Ma Moment. On this live session, we've hosted Mutiu Sumonu, CON, is the chairman of Julius Berger PLC. We've hosted Babs Omotowa, is the chairman of Montserrat Oil and Gas BV in the Netherlands. We've hosted Willie Bolter, who is the chief commercial officer of Indigo Airlines based in India. My guest today is Jay Jenkins. Jay is the head of technology strategy and evangelism for Google Cloud in Asia Pacific region. He's based in Singapore. His Make or Ma conversation, as well as those of the leaders I mentioned earlier, are available on YouTube. Now, Jay helps organizations and practitioners transform their technologies and processes in order to support more agile, scalable, and secure digital operations. He has several years of experience applying transformative technologies to a wide range of industries around the globe. Before joining Google, Jay was a partner at a specialist technology firm focused on agile technology transformation and business process re-engineering. He has worked in global consulting firms where he specialized in business process transformation through technology. My guest today was born in the United States of America and has lived and worked in Australia, Vietnam, and now Singapore. It's a real pleasure to welcome Jay to this live conversation. Jay, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Good, good, good. It's 6 minutes past midnight in Singapore.
It
Thank
is, but
you.
I'm excited about the conversation, so I feel fresh. I feel good.
Excellent, excellent. Good to hear that. I'm excited, to have you, and I'm sure even the viewers are also happy. I can see a comment here by Engineer Favor says is happy to be here, and I'm sure there are many other people that are happy to be here. Thanks again for your for the conversation, the Mekoma conversation that was recorded. And is available on YouTube. It was a great conversation. Quite some interesting feedback from there. So we just dive straight in. We've got quite a number of questions already, and I'd like to encourage folks to send in their questions or engage or seek clarification even as we go. Like Jay said, when we met some like an hour ago or 2 hours ago, he said he wants it to be interactive. So let's make it as interactive as possible. So I just dive straight in. A question here says, I run a business with approximate $50,000 turnover per month. How can SMEs, at small medium enterprises, how can they leverage technology to create value for the business?
Right, so that's a really good question. Really for any business, you really need to focus on the problem that you're trying to solve and then choose the technology from there. Now, for a small or medium enterprise, one that doesn't have a lot of money to invest in technical talent, I definitely recommend that you focus on software as a service types of technologies, because these are providers that are providing a line of business service or a horizontal service to help support your business, and they are going to do the innovation underneath. So you don't need to necessarily keep up with that. You just need to do the upfront research to figure out whether that product is right for you. Focus on software as a service. You don't need deep technical skills. You can focus your team on the administration of those and not necessarily the installation, the upgrading, the actual hardware infrastructure servers that need to support that either. You're sort of at that level of abstraction where you're just focused on the business application of that software and not the underlying software itself.
Okay, good. Thanks very much for that, Jay. And we'll just move to the next question. I can see a comment here by HS Yinka from Qatar. He says he's so happy to join. We're so happy to have you, Yinka. So let's get it going. So I hear you in terms of leveraging technology to create value for the business. You talked about understanding what problem you're trying to solve, and and essentially outsourcing this. That's what I hear. And that dovetails straight to the next question. And it says that I'm rolling out technology in my enterprise, but I'm concerned about data security. So I want you to address it from the point of view, of they, running or managing the technology themselves. And of course, from what you said, getting the experts even to run that for them. What are your views, Jay?
Yeah, so whenever I talk to customers about security, one of the things they do ask is, how secure is the cloud, right? Since I work in that industry, and the question I always come back to them with is compared to what, right? So if you're going to talk about security in the cloud, you really need to think about what are you baselining that against. So let's say that I do have infrastructure on-prem and I'm managing and monitoring that self. Do we really believe that server or that group of servers is actually more secure than a cloud provider could be? And I say could be for a reason, right? Because you definitely have to do your due diligence and understand how those organizations manage their security. But if you take a look at an organization like Google, which has software that supports billions of users with Gmail and YouTube, we've worked a lot on security, right? And we have around 750 engineers focused purely on security. I'm not sure how much an organization that just has like 1,000 people would have, but certainly not 750 security engineers. So you need to think about compared to what. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a concern or a gap, but I would say the gap in skills is how do I take my security people that know how to manage infrastructure on-prem and change them into cloud security people, because it is a different kind of problem. So I do recommend that those security engineers do get trained on how to do cloud security, which is different from on-premise security. The networking is different. The access to applications is different. Because if you don't do that, what you're going to end up doing is just duplicating your on-prem security into the cloud, which isn't going to be best for the cloud, and it's also going to reduce your agility as well and your opportunity to take advantage of the other types of services that the cloud can offer.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. Great response. And I would like to say, if you're just joining, this is After 5 at 5, a live conversation following a recorded one, which is called the Make or Ma moment. That is available on YouTube. My conversation with Jay is available on YouTube. My guest today, if you're just joining, is Jay Jenkins. Jay is the head of technology strategy and evangelism at Google. He's based in Singapore, and he'll be sharing his experience. Started doing that though as a global leader, his views on entrepreneurship and how he develops himself. I can say a lot of the questions are technical questions, so bring on the leadership questions as well. Jay will be glad to respond. This is being streamed live on our Twitter account. So my Twitter account and Jay's Twitter account is streaming this live on our Facebook account and on my YouTube account. Also, my Instagram is streaming, but it is not compatible with the platform I'm using now. So we're having to do a live video on a live video. So for improved experience, I suggest you move to the other platforms. Welcome, Hazy Black. Hazy Black says, good to hear Jay, speak again. I love the way you speak. Okay. So while we're still on technology, there's a question here that says, "What are your views on some of the ethical challenges posed by artificial intelligence?"
Right. So yeah, that is a very good question, and and there are many ethical challenges, and so the one I guess I'll focus on for this one is one that I've been focusing on a lot as well, which is that the data that is being used to train AI is biased. All of the data is biased, right? I mean, if you take a look at where a preponderance of the data comes from, it's been labeled by humans, it's been generated by humans, it's been detected by humans, and that data is now being used to train AI. What we don't want is to take the bias that is inherent in that data and in the systems that created that data and copy it and duplicate that into AI systems. We have an opportunity to do this better. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we do that better? Well, we need to understand, number one, that the data itself is biased, and it means that we need to do things from a data engineering perspective, such as oversampling of underbiased data. We need to actively go out and source that data from populations and regions around the world which might be underrepresented in that data. For those of you who might not understand sort of like what that means, let me give you an example. If you show most vision AI, so where it can take a look at a picture and it can understand what's in that picture. If you show a picture of a Western wedding, AI will detect that it's a wedding ceremony. If you show a picture of an Indian wedding, it might say something like a celebration, or it might say something like a party, but it will not know that that's a wedding, even though it might be obvious to a human eye, in particular somebody that's from India, right? So we need to oversample from those, get properly labeled data, and introduce that to these systems. Now, it's not an easy task. It's going to be very difficult for us to do that. And luckily, it requires a number of things. Number one, it also includes diversifying the people that collect the data. It means diversifying the engineering teams that actually come up with those models to make sure that other people are represented in that room as well to help create these better models. And I think that that is something that are the principles of AI, which Google participates in. Really, it comes to the forefront in making sure that we think about the people that aren't in the room, and by not in the room, I mean that aren't represented in the data as well.
Indeed, and I mean, and like they say, garbage in, garbage out, right? So that is where the bias comes from. Ayola Babalola, I can see you. I can see your question, but I'm going to come back to you in a bit. I just want to dig deep a little bit on the response that Jay gave concerning ethical concerns. I want to talk about this what they call autonomous vehicles, autonomous vehicle markets, Internet of Things, and the market. I remember it was. I read recently. I remember it was valued at about $60 billion, and it's projected to grow by grow 10 times within the next 5 years. There was an accident. I'm not sure if you knew about this. The first accident by a driverless vehicle. It happened in Arizona 2 years ago, and the person actually died. So if the autonomous vehicle market is going to grow that much, and of course that's just like 5 years. There was a McKinsey report that I read. It was going to grow by in the next 6 years by it's going to be about $600 million. how do we address such challenges? I think for that particular accident, when the court ruled that the person that died was at fault. She was using the phone and walking and all that. But those are ethical challenges. How do you see this space, playing out in the next 10 years?
Yeah, well, again, that's a real tough question. So, and let me explain maybe a little bit, why that's tough. So, I guess number one, we have to think about what is the goal of AI here. And it's interesting, right? Because if you think about AI, how many deaths per year are there from human drivers? A lot, right? It's one of the leading causes of death is human error in driving. Now, if we take a look at the number of AI-driven miles versus the number of accidents there are, there actually haven't been that many. However, for some reason they are sort of emotionally a little bit less tolerable, because it's sort of like, oh, I can't blame someone because this accident happened. So if the AI ends up being a more capable driver, what is our tolerance there for error for AI? It seems to be a lot less than humans, even though it might have a net benefit if we have AI driving. The second one is a much harder problem, right? Because now we're talking about programming active decisions into AI. It's the trolley problem, right? If I'm going to hit one person, or sorry, if I'm going to hit 5 people and I can avoid that and hit one person, are we really going to have the AI decide that one, that those 5 lives are worth more than that one life? Or what if it's one life and another life? What if it's an older person and a young person? What if it's, how do we get AI to think about those things? And I think we're a long way from that. And I think it's difficult for us to think about whether we want things like that, codified at all. Because, that the person that is coding that is actually, making the ethical choice there, not necessarily the autonomous vehicle.
Okay, thank you very much, Jay. Thank you so much for that response. Great response. Um, Ayola Bankole, I know I saw your first question, but so many comments came in and I can't scroll down again. If you can just, paste the first question again. I can see the second question about conducting tech businesses in Nigeria. I've noted that. I'm going to get back to that. But the very first question which you raised, please, if you can paste it again. I hit J. Now, J, there's a question here. It says, conducting tech or new businesses in a country like Nigeria is very difficult. And we have so many challenges, including the devaluation of the currency, the cost of purchasing of gadgets and devices. Uh, so the question is, how does one get? Oh, is it complete? How does one succeed? Let me edit for the question for the question for the person raising the question. How does one succeed in such a difficult market where there's devaluation of the currency and you're competing globally?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is tough. I know that Google has its Next Billion Users initiative, which is primarily focused around Africa, where we are looking at what infrastructure needs we need to put in to make it so that human beings can achieve in Nigeria, as an example. So yeah, look, how do you conduct business in Nigeria? I honestly, I don't know, right? I mean, I would love to have a deeper conversation on that. It sounds like you've brought up a number of different things, right? There's the currency issues, that tyranny of distance from where those markets are. And maybe if we look at some other emerging countries that have had some success, we can maybe get an idea around how they can do that. So let's take Vietnam as an example. Like, they don't have the currency issue because their currency is nominally pinned to the US dollar. So they haven't had the wild devaluation of the currency. But they are in a very narrow market. They don't have as much mind share as a China. They don't have as many people or startups as a country like Indonesia in Southeast Asia. So what can Vietnam do? And the organizations that we work with in Vietnam focus on a localized problem. And in fact, even if you look at Indonesia and organizations like Gojek, where did they focus? They did not focus on, what can we do to become like a super regional provider, even though they are one now. They focus very much on Indonesia and that market. The companies in Vietnam are doing the same. They're solving local problems. And it turns out when you solve local problems, that you're finding those edge cases, and you'll find that many people around the world have those problems. Another example is Google created some apps specifically for the Indian market. So YouTube offline and files offline. And what we found is it's not just India, right? Obviously, it's a lot of emerging countries that are using those applications, but even in developed nations, such as the US, they are also using these applications because, again, not everybody is always online all the time as much as we would love to think so, right? There are still people that find themselves offline who don't have access in rural areas and in other situations where they might have access, but the bandwidth is simply too low to get that throughput. So focus on solving those local problems and then expand from there. Don't try to go global first. Think about hyper-localization and think about problems that you see every day. So problems in Nigeria, and if you solve those problems first, you'll grow the company in Nigeria, and then you can think about how you might want to grow outside of Nigeria, and then being able to having that problem then of how do we deal with the devaluation of the currency as we're selling into global markets, then you can deal with that problem then.
Thank you so much, Jay, for that. I have folks saying hi. Dynamic Minds, hello. I said they're a talent management group, and they came across the link for this conversation. I trust you're having a good time and you're learning a lot as well. Emmanuel Lauren Shola says, hello, I'm joining from Nigeria. Lumified says, hello, she's enjoying the conversation. Ayola, no, Ajayi, no, sorry, Ayola Bankole Babalola, please remember to send the question, the very first question you sent, and I will be happy to take it. So the question from Ajayi Bankole says, I used to live in Nigeria. He no longer lives in Nigeria. Why is Google running both radio and TV ads in developing countries? Do you have an answer?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, if you think about how Google does things globally, they normally don't run a lot of traditional media ads. Every once in a while, you'll see them for like large events where or end of year type events where they'll run these large ads. In a country like Nigeria, one of the things we always say inside of Google is focus on the customer. And focusing on the customer also means serving the customer wherever they're at or reaching out to new customers. So inside of Google, we have this group called the Next Billion Users group, and it's a group of engineers that are purely focused on serving those next billion users. But of course, that also expands to our other parts of our business, the YouTube business, our ads business as well. And so if we're thinking about who those next billion users are, they're not the people that are necessarily on the internet all the time right now, but they are the next billion users that will be coming online, in the next few years. And that's where we want to make sure that we're focusing a lot of advertising is on TV and radio, where those users might be listening. I think it's interesting. I was in a hire car the other day, and I was listening to the radio, and there are lots of advertisements actually focused on the drivers of these hire cars, right? So, it's interesting because globally, obviously, we've moved away from taxis to ride shares in these hire cars. And people and advertisers know, where those users are, and the opportunity that exists to reach out to those users. And Google, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find out where those customers are, where those future customers are, even if they're 3 to 5 years away. That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Good response. Great response. We got feedback from Ayola Babalola, says that beautiful answers to my question. So thank you, Jay. I think you're connecting very well with the audience. If you're just joining, this is after 5. At 5, my guest is Jay Jenkins. Jay Jenkins is the head of technology strategy and evangelism at Google. He's been sharing his views on technology, on leadership, on entrepreneurship, and I can see a couple of self-development questions already here. We're going to be taking that soon. So if you're on Instagram, it's not a great experience, so you may switch to my Twitter account or Jay's Twitter account, or my Facebook or Jay's Facebook, or my YouTube account. There's You have better experience, on those handles for sure. Um, okay, so let me look at the questions. Let me move now. Okay. Hmm. Um, okay, so let me go to this one. It says, how do you develop yourself? How do you constantly develop yourself in terms of following tech trends under a paid employment?
Right. Well, there's a few things that you definitely have to do. I mean, technology is changing at such a rapid pace, and I know it can be hard to keep up. It's very hard for me. Sometimes I'm talking to a customer and they're asking me about a new Google product that I don't know about yet. So it is very hard to keep up. So one of the things that you have to do is obviously talk to the other people around you and make use of those personal networks you have. When you're going out for coffees with people or tea, or you're having lunch with somebody, you learn a lot about what's going on in the rest of an organization. So at Google, whenever I have lunch with people outside of my core group, my Google Cloud group, I learn a lot sort of about what's happening in the world. The second thing I do is I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. Audiobooks are fantastic for your commutes. I don't have a car, so I use public transport, and I just listen to audiobooks. And I also listen to audiobooks when I'm walking. I think that's a great way to keep up with some of the trends. I also have my news feed personalized so that I can keep up with technology trends there as well. But I guess the other part of that is sort of your internal drivers, which is the curiosity. So make sure that you're always curious, and make sure that you're really interested in what's going on. I get excited about things. I get excited about the new astronauts that have just made it to the International Space Station. I was watching that live as well. Had it on in the background while I was doing other things. So feed your soul as well, right? So if you're interested in technology, feed it to keep your interest. If you get too narrowly focused, you're going to get bored, you're going to get burned out, and then we're going to lose a great technology person if that's what you're interested in.
Thank you so much for that. I hope that helps the person that asked the question. There's a question slightly related to that, by Dynamic Mind. It says, Jay, have you ever been in a situation where you had to run side jobs with your work at Google? And it doesn't have to be Google. It could be, I mean, when you had a full-time employment and you had to do some side runs or side hustle, like we say. If yes, how did you manage it in a way that didn't affect your main job, in this case at Google?
Right. So I would have to say I don't think I've had an official side hustle besides raising my family, and especially over the past year, I became like a teacher, just like many of us have as well, since our kids have had to school from home. Um, but first of all, let me talk about maybe like an official side hustle where I'm trying to generate revenue outside of Google. So Google does allow that. I just can't compete directly with Google. So if I think that it might compete, then I should probably let Google know. Otherwise, I'll end up in a bad situation and won't be able to make money off of my business, right? So I would need to clear that hurdle first. However, I've also, I guess, maybe done side hustles inside of Google, which might be an interesting thing for some of you. So I have my core job, and it's kind of an interesting role, right? Because I do work with a lot of customers, I talk to a lot of analysts, and I talk about sort of how we're using our technology in the market, and then I also help evangelize that. So create a team that's excited about talking about that as well. But I do other stuff inside of Google that's not part of my core job. And luckily inside of Google, you have an opportunity to volunteer for a lot of things. So one of the things that I've done is a few years ago when we opened our office in Singapore, I was part of the committee that helped to design that office. That was a fantastic experience for me. Probably something I'll never have the opportunity to do again, but it's a super exciting thing, and it's maybe not related to my core role, but it certainly provided me personally a lot of value. Another thing that I do inside of Google is innovation coaching. So I've trained over 700 Googlers in innovation, and that's essentially using design thinking. So how do we actually create great products, and how do we think about solving processes and creating new processes and solving problems? And that is something that I decided to do on my own simply because I was very interested in it. And I've always found that, one of the best ways to learn is to be a teacher. And so I learned the process and then started teaching the process in order to, get a certain level of depth in understanding design thinking and how it could be used inside of Google. And then I was able to actually then leverage that into my role and help organizations and customers outside of Google as well. So that's one of the times where I did something outside of my role that I was able to leverage into that. So in terms of a formal side hustle generating revenue, I haven't done that yet at Google. There are paths to do that, but as far as inside of Google doing a bit of a side hustle for learning and for myself, I've definitely done that.
Yes, indeed, and I can really relate, to the challenges of working from home, working from home and schooling from home, being a teacher, and really, I mean, I think I didn't realize how much the teachers, how much effort they put in engaging, the children, and this is just one child, my child, how difficult and challenging it is to keep them engaged while you're also working. Good. So we have a question here, and it's similar to a question that came in earlier. I'm going to just merge them together. It says, I came across a video of you at a Mekoma moment with Akin Monehin, where you said you dropped out of school to pursue what was interesting and life-changing. Jay, what advice do you have for young people who are in school, also want to pursue their dreams and purpose alongside? And before you answer that, I think the question that came before was like, if you have a prodigy, will you advise your prodigy to follow your path?
Yeah, that is an interesting question, right? So maybe my knee-jerk response would be no. However, I do think all of us have to think about where the learning is. So I would say if you're dropping out of school just to go straight to working, and it's not an opportunity to learn more, do not do it. However, if it's a true opportunity to learn more, if somebody's giving you an opportunity to work at a new kind of an organization or in a new area where maybe there aren't official studies to help you prepare for that, then go and do it. There's a quote by the director Quentin Tarantino. So Quentin Tarantino did not go to film school. And there's a quote by him that says, "While everybody else was going to film school, I was making films." So if you're going to, leave your undergrad or graduate degree, think about what it is, why you're leaving, and what it is you're leaving for. If you are leaving because you're going to learn more outside of the classes than you would inside, then go for it. But I can't stress enough, though, that learning itself, while you might get more value out of that outside of the university structure, do not forget that having that degree is also a strong signal to the market that you have done the learning, right? So if I step outside of formal education, even if I've learned as much as I would have inside of formal education, it becomes much harder to prove in the employer market, right? So that needs to make sense. However, if you can go to an employer market and say, "Hey, I haven't done the learning, but I worked for this organization, and as you know, this was the leading organization in that space, or they created these new technologies, or it was founded by a brilliant entrepreneur where I learned a lot," then you need to make the case that that's a signal that's going to help you get that next job after that one.
Indeed, and I think I've had this conversation with some of my friends. Some of these additional qualifications. In the context of our discussion there, we're talking about an MBA and things like that. I see them as stamps, to endorse, like endorsement. Yeah, let me put it that way, like an endorsement for you, as it were. So yes, you benefit from the MBA, but it is really what is inside here that you're going to use to add value, even as you go and work with other organizations or found your businesses. I'd like to ask you, Jay, do you think you missed anything?
Did I miss anything by not completing my undergrad? Oh, look, I think there's always an interesting thought experiment, right? When you think about paths not taken, right, and paths not traveled. I'm sure that I would have had, an interesting life if I would have completed my undergrad. Now, keep in mind, my undergrad was in electrical engineering. It actually just created a new degree at the University of Missouri called computer engineering, but it was still basically an electrical engineering degree. And I think that would have taken me down a much different path, right? Because software engineering is different from electrical engineering, right? So I would have been deeper in the hardware and perhaps creating some of these new processors that are being created now, or thinking about printing circuit boards. That kind of thing. So it would have been, I think, it would have put me in a much different place. So, did I miss anything? Well, certainly I missed another life, right, that I would have led if I would have done that. But I do not think that I would be in this life where I am right now if I had stayed.
Good. So we're getting feedback. We can see Emmanuel says, "Thank you, Akin and Jay. The answers have been great." Dynamic Mind says, "Thank you, Jay. Satisfactory answer." I would like to move into a question that was sent ahead of the session, and it says, "Are you into Bitcoin? If yes, why?
Right.
If
okay.
not, hang on. Are you into Bitcoin? If yes, why? If no, if not, why not? I want to hear your views. Shoot."
Right. Okay. So here we go. Yeah, Bitcoin. First of all, I'm extremely interested in Bitcoin. So I do check Bitcoin prices just to see sort of like what it's doing and how it's being used. And I do think it's interesting because you could kind of argue that right now Bitcoin isn't really a currency, right? It's not that fluid like into cash, and people aren't really using it as a currency, right? They're using it as an asset, almost like a digital gold substitution, right? Where I'm just buying it, holding it, and then and investing in it that way. So we were having this conversation earlier, and I do confess that I do have I have one Bitcoin. I got it for free back when Bitcoin was new, and I was just experimenting with the technology, and somebody transferred me one, just so I could understand how the technology works and look at the underlying and play with the underlying technology. And yeah, so I still have it. So but I think it's interesting because I got it for free, like the market value doesn't. I'm definitely still wowed by it, but the market value for me is still very much paper, right? And until because it's in a cold wallet, so until I put it on the market, right, and sell it, it's not real for me. But hopefully, if it keeps going, it can pay for my son or daughter's university, degree, or hopefully both of them. But I am not an active investor, right? So I'm not buying more Bitcoin. I haven't sold any of that Bitcoin at all. I'm definitely interested in it. I definitely see where cryptocurrencies go. I'm more interested in sort of like, I guess, blockchain in general as sort of a immutable ledger, more so than Bitcoin as the currency. So because I do think that blockchain is not really in its infancy. It's actually moving now into an adoption stage, right? And it's beginning to be used and adopted for a broader range of things than simply cryptocurrencies.
Thank you so much for that. I'll move to the next question. Oh, before moving to the next question, I think I recall the question that I missed. The person didn't put it back there. I think it was talking about Bitcoin in a country like Nigeria, that the government is hostile to such progressive currency or even tech startups. Do you have any views or any advice on that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because, like I said, Bitcoin is really being treated more as an asset, right? And I guess you could go and try to control, the purchase of gold or something else as well, right, as an investment. But really, the traceability is at the exchange. I think, and maybe it's difficult at the moment in Nigeria, but as more countries start to regulate the exchanges, it is fully traceable and trackable, right? You'll know exactly where that Bitcoin started and where it ended up. So it's not like a piece of gold where you can buy it one place and it mysteriously and magically shows up someplace else, and it could be funding something that the government doesn't want funded. Since Bitcoin is fully traceable, you'll actually see where that currency goes and how it moves. And the exchanges are a great way to sort of see where that money ends up. So I think that it comes down to sort of a certain level of understanding, and it also comes down to how many countries need to come on board and regulate the exchanges before a country let's say Nigeria is also comfortable regulating the exchanges or with the traceability at the exchange.
Thank you very much. You may view Jay's Make or Ma moment, which is a recorded conversation on my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is the Akin Monehin. It's right there on the screen. This conversation also will be uploaded on my YouTube channel after now, so you can watch again and refer to it. Follow me on social media platforms to get notification for great content and future conversations. Yeah, so Heezy Black says, oh, I've gotten so much value from this conversation. Ayola Babalola says, how often does this conversation hold? It's mind opening. Yeah, so we just subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to follow me on Instagram or connect me on Instagram, on Twitter. I usually publicize it. So there's what we call the make or mar moment, which is a recorded conversation, and it really talks about, focuses on a decision that you took that could have marred you but made you, and some leadership lessons from there, entrepreneurship lessons from there, personal development lessons from there as well. Then after the make or ma, we usually have this live conversation. So we have maybe like twice a month. You have something at least going on the channel, but you need to get connected so that you can be plugged in. We're not having a great experience on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, I would like to encourage you to go to YouTube, to Facebook, to Twitter. Jay is streaming this on his Twitter and his Facebook account, as well as and it's also on my YouTube and also on my YouTube channel. What is your prediction for Bitcoin? That's the next question I have here.
Look, if I knew that answer, then I would be investing or divesting my Bitcoin, right? I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it does, depend on. A lot of it does depend on governments and how they choose to regulate it and how they choose to regulate it at the exchange. But I do believe that there are a lot of values in cryptocurrencies, and of course, as we all know, they only have as much value as we decide to give them. I think that we might begin to run into trouble if governments do choose not to let people liquefy those assets, right? Liquefy those bitcoins, because I think, as I said before, that Bitcoin is very much being treated as an asset and not a currency. And so if it's an asset without an exchange and it's not a very good currency, then that value is going to fall pretty quickly.
Good. Ayo Monehin says, great conversation. Happy to be here. Happy to have you here as well. Okay. We got a question and is asking, Jay, do you also experience imposter syndrome? Maybe looking at your profile and what you've done, and you're working with different organizations all over the world. You go to almost any organization. I'm from Google. I want to meet with you guys. They open their doors to you and listen to what you've got to say. So, do you suffer from or do you experience imposter syndrome, Jay?
All of the time. Absolutely. So, before joining Google, when I was doing consulting work, you had imposter syndrome for like the first 4 to 5 weeks of any new engagement, right? Because you don't know the domain, you don't know why you're really there. They're teaching you, right, for the first 5 or 6 weeks, so that then you can start to add value. And I guess I sort of got comfortable with being a short-term imposter through that, because I started thinking about, okay, look, they know that they have to teach me these things. They know that I don't know the domain, and yet I am here. So why am I here? So there must be other value, right, that I bring, which isn't necessarily domain knowledge, but it's a different view, a different viewpoint, a different perspective, different ways of thinking. Sometimes there's simply value in not being a part of that organization, right? Because you can bring in other experiences that you've had to that organization and see what makes sense for that organization. So I definitely had a lot of those as a consultant. Now at Google, actually, even during my MBA, doing my MBA, you also have imposter syndrome, right? You're working with all these people, and they all have different types of experiences, and people are there's always somebody that's better than you at something, right? So, I think that's normal. And I think that, and at Google, I've experienced the same thing. Again, I work with a lot of smart people, and I'm excited that I get to work with all those smart people, because I get to learn so much from them as well. And I think if any of you are experiencing imposter syndrome, again, think about sort of like what value you bring to the room. And a lot of people think about sort of like the curve, right? And maybe there's a lot of people in the middle that know a lot, and then these edges where people don't know much. But then there are these like little anomalies, right, in these edges, and that's where the interesting thing is. So don't think of yourself as an imposter, right? Think of yourself as an interesting anomaly that's bringing something new, some new data to that equation that is going to be valuable. And one of the great things about working at a place like Google is, so many people are very open and vulnerable about the fact that they also have imposter syndrome, and therefore it's quite normalized, and we're all, we all end up sort of using that to sort of help and learn from each other as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jay. And this is actually a very common, and I really appreciate your honest, answer, and quite sincere answer to that. Um, 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 but interestingly, imposter syndrome has been associated with to women, and not just women of color. But interestingly, I ran into an article, a Harvard Business Review article. The title is "What CEOs Are Afraid of," and the number one thing is the fear of being discovered to be a fraud, and that is imposter syndrome. I wrote an article about it. So I gave three, three tactics I use to overcome imposter syndrome. The first one is that I tell myself that no one really cares, because in my head I'm like, okay, are they watching me? Are they watching me from, if am I as good as I said I am? Things like that. I saw something that says that at 20, and that really gave me freedom, and I want to share that here as well. Because at age 20, you're constantly worrying about what other people think of you. At age 40, you wake up and say, I'm not going to give a damn what people are thinking about me. At age 60, you realize that no one was thinking about you at all in the first place. And that, I keep telling myself that. Second thing I do is that I remind myself of my past successes and my strength, and the third thing I do is that I act my way out of imposter feeling. There's something that Rick Warren says quite often. He says feelings follow action. So I act my way. I'm not intimidated, and I just raise up my shoulder and continue my deliverable, and more often the feeling of being competent comes. Thank you so much for that. Let me move very quickly. We have questions coming in now, but just give me a minute. Let me pick one that was sent in earlier. Um, and I like what you said, about working in a competitive place, as Google, and I can imagine. There's a question here. I'm looking for it. I want to tie it into that. Um, yeah. So the question says, working for one of the biggest organizations in the world, talent must be everywhere. How do you survive in such a very competitive work environment?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? I mean, well, number one, I think people need to stop thinking about surviving, right, and focus on thriving. Um, and think about your organization that way. That your organization should be there to help you thrive, and so should the other people in the business. They should all be there to help you thrive. Is it highly competitive? Look, I suppose it is. In that we all want to be our best. I guess the difference is that I truly want everybody else at the organization to also be their best, because it's not a zero-sum game, right? If everybody in the organization can be their best, right, then the entire organization lifts, right? It's not about if you want to have the tallest building, you don't knock down all the other buildings. Sure, you could have the tallest building if you do that, right? We just build the tallest building. And so how do I survive? I guess a lot of it is that I kind of don't worry about everybody else. There have certainly been times where I have applied for a role internally inside of Google and not gotten it, and someone else has gotten it, and great for them. And I might feel bad, for the first couple of weeks, but I don't seek to sabotage them, nor do I believe that they would seek to sabotage me either. But I just think to myself, well, okay, that opportunity or that door is currently closed. What else is there? What other opportunities are there for me? I think that in terms of surviving, you really just don't think of everybody else as your competition, right? You're supposed to be all there as part of the same organization because you have the same goals, and you're trying to achieve something as a group and as a team. I guess maybe don't think of them as competition. Yes, just really lean into, I guess, any discomfort you might feel. Whether it's imposter syndrome or you're feeling that you didn't get a role. It's really leaning into each of those things as an opportunity to learn and to refocus and to look for different types of opportunities.
Thank you for that. Still on working in such a competitive environment, I read once, and I read it in fact, I actually wrote about it, in a positive manner, in a positive way, i.e., Google provides sleep pods for staff, i.e., you can nap, while at work, and, you feel tired, go there, sleep, come back to work and all that. But I read recently again that, it just shows that Google is overworking you guys, and you guys spend, crazy amount of time in the office, and and therefore you should, of course, you should sleep, sleep and work maybe like 18 hours or something. A question talks about, I want to pull it out now. It came while I was talking. It talked about the work-life balance. I want to link it to that. It says, how do you go about no, that's not it. Just hold that thought. I'm going to find a question. I saw it talked about you having a balanced life. Yeah, it says that, how do you manage your time being a technology strategist and a leader that is change oriented? Your time in terms of time with the family, time for self-development, and time for social media. So let's hear from you.
Sure. I guess we do all choose, right, to prioritize certain things. One of the things that I do that I have enjoyed at Google is, there are times where I am super busy, where I give the organization a lot of my time, and then there are other times where I don't give the organization as much time. And let me give an example, right? So my kids are extremely important to me, and if one of my childs has a school play that they're doing that day, I will go and see that school play, and nobody in my organization asks me where I am, or if they do, they say, well, enjoy, and they leave me alone. So it's interesting, and I think it's up to each individual how they handle this, right? So there's work-life balance, or some people now sort of are doing more work-life integration, right? How do you integrate both of these things and plan those things around each other? So for me, it's not necessarily sort of 8-9 hours a day in the office. It is 8-9 hours a day that I can spend doing different things for my organization, and that can be spread throughout the day. It doesn't necessarily have to happen between a certain time. There are times where I will go into the office at 11 o'clock, and there are times where I will go into the office at 8 o'clock, and there are times where I will leave the office at 3 o'clock, and there are times where I will leave the office 6-7 o'clock. So it really does depend on sort of what I have to work on, and of course, being a digital organization, there are times I have to work at home as well. In particular, if you're working for a company where a lot of the people that you need to talk to are in the U.S., you're going to have to take those late calls or those early morning calls. But I plan my day around that. And if I feel I've had enough work for today, then I will just unplug, right? And I will go and do things with my family. Or if I feel that my family needs more time, then I will spend that time with my family. I think it'll be interesting as we move forward. Look, whenever work first started, and there were no sort of like 8-9 hour days that people had to work, right? People would just like do the work. Okay, the work is done. I will go home. So hopefully, we'll get back to a little bit more result-oriented work environments and less sort of like clock in, clock out type environments, because I don't think that those are necessarily ideal for anybody.
Yes, indeed, and the COVID-19 pandemic has really changed the way we see work and the way we approach work. I haven't been into my office now for over a year. I've been working from home, and you talked about work-life integration. With working from home, I think it's really it's
Yeah,
really
it's a different struggle, right? It's a different struggle, and actually, I have to say I haven't, because I haven't answered Emmanuel's the second part of this question when he's talking about time for self-development and time for social media.
Go ahead.
Self-development, I have to put it in my calendar. So like my Google Calendar rules sort of everything that I do at home and at work. So if you don't put the time in for self-development, you're not going to do that. Same for social media. Although I have to say, quite honestly, I am not good at managing my social media. Meaning, I actually don't think that I put enough time into it. I should do more, or what I should do is spend less time consuming and more time creating on social media.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I mean, I see your social media accounts are not very active. And talking about creating time, while I was in Qatar, I was a strategy and planning manager in Qatar. I had a team of about maybe like 8 people or so. And, we realized that, every year there's a development plan, and there's a business plan, a personal development plan, and a business delivery plan. And the team always delivers on the business delivery plan, and zero on the personal development plan. So what I did then was to um, block out a day in a month. So a Wednesday, I think, was the last Wednesday in the month, and we will not be in the office. We'll move to you know like a retreat center. We sponsored it ourselves, and we just moved there. It could be a hotel. It could be a research center in Qatar. It could be at the beach. And we just go with our laptops, unplug from work, and focus on our development. Throughout the day. And the year we did that, we didn't hit 100% of our plan, but we did like 85% of the plan. So I agree with you in terms of scheduling time for your development. And if you're here, your development is your responsibility. There was a post I put out, I think, a week ago. It is not your manager's responsibility. It is not your organization's responsibility. It's not even your school's responsibility. The responsibility lies on you. Yes, some organizations have good plans, great plans, for their staff, or even for the talent as well. But you need to take ownership. You need to be in the driving seat for that to be meaningful. Still on your job and Google, there's a question that came in. It says, I read online that Google receives 2 million job applications per year. So you must have been extremely lucky to have gotten a job within 6 months of being in the labor market. Was there anything special you did? Do you have tips for me? I'm an IT professional looking for a job internationally. I'm based in Kenya.
Right. Yeah. So, is there anything special I did? Well, I don't think that I did anything special, but I definitely went to Google's website. I read because Google actually puts up how they interview and what they look for in their interview. So, I would go and read that. Also, with my CV, I definitely took a look at how I was talking about things, and I made a special one focused on the job at Google, right? So, yeah, I guess don't have the one CV, right, that you send to 10 or 20 different organizations, right? Make sure you read through that, make sure that the skills you're highlighting are applicable to that job. And the other thing that I did, because I remember doing this at the time, was I went through every single item on my CV and I made sure that I also talked about the impact that I made. So not just these are the things that I did, or this was my role, or these are the projects that I worked on, but I really made sure that this is the project I work on. This is the impact that I personally had on that project, right? So I would definitely recommend thinking about that, right? And because if you're reading a CV, looking at a list of roles or a list of responsibilities is just that you're just describing your job to them. But if you talk about the impact that you made, then you're describing what you can do for them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jay, for that. Getting very good comments. Thank you for your response. Great response. And they say you also look good. Whoa, okay.
Thanks. It's a good light. I've got good lighting here.
uh, uh, and one thing you said about the interviews, because I also interview for my company, and I think what you said is actually the truth. Forward-looking companies um, make their recruitment process as transparent as possible. And and I see folks coming for interviews that they're on the edge and all that. And you ask them a question, they think you're trying to trick them. No, it's not a trick question. It is a simple question. We're trying to just get evidence from you that indeed you can deliver this role. Another thing I want to mention, another point I want to talk about, you talk about your CV and being very clear on the value that you added to your organization in your previous role, and that is so important. I'm sure you remember Wei, the director of um, um, recruitment in Chicago booth. Do you remember Wei? He
Yeah,
was busy.
yeah.
So I had a session with Wei. He reviewed my CV, and my CV was like 5 pages or something. And he shredded it to 2 pages. I mean, I felt like a part of me was missing. And I'm like, come on, I've done so much. I have 5 pages of my CV. You're not going to reduce it to 2 pages. No way. And there was a lot of iteration. And
Mm.
what I saw he was really focused on is the outcome. So this role, I performed this role in this organization. This is what I did in the role. This was how it added to the objectives of the business. And 2 pages after it took us, I'll say, a couple of months because I wasn't letting go of my of those my job descriptions. essentially, which I had on my CVs, and but I think after the process, it's really I really valued his input. And to everyone there, looking for a job, great advice by Jay, and also you need to focus on what you did, and how it impacted the objectives of the business. So someone is taking advice now. Um, HSC Yinka says, lovely. I'm going to update that on my CV now. Yes, I'll make it 2 pages. Try to make it two, 2 pages. It will be difficult, but please do that, because recruiters don't have time to go through pages and pages and job description. They know the job, right? If you say this is your job is HSC manager, for example, they have an idea of what you do. So you need to link how you've delivered your job to the safety goals of the business, to the safety targets, to incidents, reduction in incidents, personal safety, process safety, things like that. You need to link it, how it even makes the business more profitable. They're not paying for, they're not safety incidents is not costing the business downtime, production down. You need to link it, and I think that will really make it stand out from what is quite common. I'm asking you a question now. We have quite a number of questions. I understand, Jay, it should be like past 1 a.m., right, in Singapore, right?
Yeah, it's 1:14.
1:14, yes. So I'd like to round this off in the next, 15 minutes or thereabouts. So thank you very much for your time, Jay. If you just join in, you've missed quite a bit. This is After 5 at 5, a live conversation following a recorded one, which is called the Make or Man Moment. That is available on my YouTube channel, my conversation with Jay. My guest today is Jay Jenkins, is the head of technology strategy and evangelism at Google. He's been sharing his experience as a technology leader, a business leader, a global leader. He's sharing his views on entrepreneurship and how he develops himself. This is being streamed live on our Twitter accounts, on our Facebook accounts, on my Facebook or my YouTube account, and on my Instagram. If you're on Instagram, the experience is not great, so please advise you connect to other platforms for improved experience. There's a question here. It says that as regards personal development, how does one tackle the issue of morality, which ought to be rather personal? How does one deal with societally imposed norms, which one does not really find comfortable? Is that clear?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I can help with this, I guess, in the technology space, but I think that this is important for everyone's personal development, right? I think as you're growing as a leader, certainly you need to do the hard work on growing yourself personally as well. And I think the tough part happens whenever it's interesting, right? Because you think about how am I making this world a better place, you do realize that there are all sorts of blockers, right? There are societal blockers, there are governmental blockers that keep progress from being made in a way that you would like to see. I mean, morality is very subjective to people, so I don't want to talk about any specific morality here, but I will say that as a leader, there's going to come a time where you're going to have to, people generally, when you're younger, you sort of tend to focus on revenue because you think to yourself, think about everything that I could do with that revenue. And then, you sort of start to focus more on, making the world a better place, because then it's sort of like, now that I'm making that revenue, what can I do to like actually, help grow not just myself, but the rest of the world, right? And that's what I think about when I think about morality, right? It's not just about me being a moral and good person, but it's me having a greater impact than that, and helping other people find that space to help other people grow, right? Because you get sort of like this network effect of morality that's going to help the world grow. So, I think that definitely as a leader, it does become one of those sort of like, think globally, act locally sorts of situations where you really need to think about where you can have an impact. Sometimes that impact is just reaching out to one person that might be struggling. Like, let's say you're where the societal norms are affecting somebody that somebody you care about, somebody that you love. It's up to you to really sort of reach out and have that effect locally, and do what you can to support them emotionally. Outside of that, what can you do then at a broader perspective? And again, it becomes hard, right? Because in certain countries, if your morals don't agree with that country's morals, you can be putting your life at risk. So you do need to think about those things as well in the lives of your family. But if there are enough people that want to change things, then change can happen. But it doesn't have to necessarily happen in a big way at first. You really need to think about what you can do personally, and taking the risk that you are comfortable taking. So, I guess the question was, if I'm uncomfortable with society's morals, then you also need to think about what risk are you then comfortable taking to challenge those, right? So think about sort of what risk you're willing to take personally, and and think about maybe the cognitive dissonance that might appear to you in your head as you're dealing with those challenges.
Thank you very much, Jay, for that. There's a question I pasted here, but I didn't paste it fully. So I think I remember how it ended. So I'll just round it off. I'll end it off in the way I think it ended it. It says that I've noticed that most big tech companies today started their services like free, i.e., they provide free services, Google Search, Facebook, etc. Despite the huge investment in data center infrastructures. At what point do you think a technology company, I think he said should break through 3 months, 6 months, break even 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? What's your view?
Yeah, so well, there's no clear timeline on that, right? I mean, there are a lot of big tech companies that still aren't making a profit, right? There are companies that have gone IPO, right, that still aren't making a profit. So here's so companies do this for a number of reasons, right? And it's because people believe that if you're creating something of value, that you should be able to find a way to monetize that. Now, it's not necessarily always true, but organizations, the reason why they get lots of venture capital investment is through growth, right? In other words, they're seeing a large explosion in growth, which means there's value there. If lots of people are adopting this technology, using this technology, it means that there is value there. And if they're doing something unique, that means there's very little competition in that space either, right? So that you're looking at this massive amount of growth, and you need to understand, I guess, as an entrepreneur, what your market is, and when that market starts to get saturated, and you're going to have to look at like when that might start to plateau, and you're going to have to talk to your venture capitalists or your investors to set an expectation, which is, look, we're having this growth right now. It's going to start to plateau at around these numbers. So if we monetize now, we're going to stunt our growth, which isn't what you want, right? So you need to like convince them, oh well, we're targeting monetization right here, where we're gonna start to start that curve is gonna start to flatten anyway, or it's going to get to a point where the network effect pulls in the rest of those people, right? So you need to think about as an organization what that target growth number is, and therefore when you're going to be able to monetize that.
Good, clear. COVID-19 has impacted the way we do business forever. Many have been fired, more will be fired. Firing staff is the most challenging part of my role as a leader. So much emotions are involved. You know so well, as you have experienced job loss before. How do I fire staff knowing well that many lives depend on that income and still feel good about myself?
So yeah, so I mean, there's probably some bad news here is you're never going to feel good, firing somebody, right, or taking away somebody's opportunity, or you're changing their life in a pretty profound way at that moment. What I will say is, as an organization, what you should be doing is making sure that you're preparing that person for whatever their next role is, right? I think how they feel about the organization or about you as a manager and leader really depends on how you treated them prior to that, not necessarily at that moment. I mean, that moment's going to have an impact, absolutely. But how did you treat them before then? Did you provide them opportunities to learn and to grow? And are they at a better place now when they're leaving the organization than they were when they arrived? Because if they're leaving with more than they arrived with, then at least you're giving them something to move on to that next job with. So I think organizations should not just think about hiring and using people as simple resources, but they are there to for an organization also, and a manager and a leader to help grow as well. So if you've been focused on their growth while they've been at the organization, then hopefully they're leaving the organization in a better place than they were, and with a better set of skills than they were previously. Now, if you have the capability as an organization and you feel that this is going to have some sort of mass effect, or perhaps the skills that they had learned are going to be no longer valuable in the market, maybe it's time to think about what you can do as an organization to help these people get their next job. Is there a skills program that you can set up? Is there access to education that you can give them in order to help them get the skills that they're going to need moving forward? Is that a government's job? I would say it's a government's job as well, right? But I also think it's if you're a good organization and a good if you're a good organization full of good leaders, you're going to want to make sure that you are taking care of those people, because that's also going to mean a lot to the people that are choosing to stay with your organization. Because don't forget, whenever you do a mass firing, the good people that can leave will leave as well.
Absolutely, and quite valid. When you have such an exercise, the folks staying behind will also say, okay, so this is potentially me, right? And this is how I'm going to get treated, and that will also impact their dedication and their focus on the job, which will ultimately impact the organizational culture and, of course, the profits of the business. I'm seeing feedback here. Thank you for the comprehensive response. So thank you. It seems folks asking questions are quite satisfied with the answers you are providing. So that is very good, Jay. Just in 2 words, I have 2 questions, right? So I'll ask you the first one. Just give me 1 or 2 sentences for that. It's not it's a personal counseling question, not a professional one, not an entrepreneurial one. It says, what age do you recommend for a young CEO or young leader to start thinking of marriage based on your experience? So 2 sentences, I'll move to the last question.
Right, okay, 2 sentences. Number 1, get married when you fall in love. Number 2, let your partner know that you're an entrepreneur and what that lifestyle is going to be like. I think if you do both those things, then hopefully you'll have a happy marriage no matter when you get married.
Excellent. Last question. At the Make you talked about Google's strength, not forcing products on customers, but adapting products and services to what customers want. My experience is customers can be unreasonable. In fact, many will take advantage of you when they know you listen. How can we strike a fine balance between doing customers' bidding and running a profitable venture? Mind you, I know customer is king and they are always right. So don't give me that one. Don't give me that line. But this is the reality, Jay.
Yeah. So first of all, a little bit of relief. I don't believe the customer is always right. And if they're wrong, then they're probably the wrong customer for your business, right? So think about it that way. The other part of it is, who is the right customer, and therefore who are you serving, right? This is supposed to be a mutually beneficial arrangement, right? Where I'm providing you a service that is as or more valuable than what you're actually paying for it. So the idea around developing products for customers and listening to customers is not just about listening to what they necessarily say. It's about looking at a customer's behavior, which then reflects what they want as well. And it's also about developing empathy for that customer. So if a customer is complaining about something and you take away, sort of any anger or emotions that might be related to that. Now, number one, keep in mind that the emotions are data that let you know what people care about, right? So keep that in mind. So if someone's angry about something, they're angry because they care, and they're talking to you because they still think that you can help them. If they didn't think that you could help them, they wouldn't be talking to you anymore. So you need to take those emotions, you need to take that data and think about, what is it that this customer is really complaining about, and how can I then make this service better? So I'm trying to think of a good example. Let's say. Let's do a really simple one where customers just complaining that it takes too long to receive their order. Now, they could be saying it. You could also be seeing it in the data that people are canceling their orders if it's taking too long, or the reviews are starting to get tanked on whatever review site might be reviewing your product because these things are taking too long, and therefore this thing is now affecting your business. You can get better empathy with the customer. Maybe they don't want necessarily faster delivery. Maybe they just want better transparency over that delivery. So they need to know and have a better expectation of when they might be receiving it, rather than, you say it's 2 to 6 days, but it takes, 2 to 6 weeks. So maybe they just want more transparency. And empathizing with the customer is about exactly that. It's figuring out what is it that they really want and what's going to help them feel better, about that experience. And there are different ways to do that. So one, obviously, is just to talk to customers, interview them. The other one is there are polls you can do. There's data that you can use on your websites. But each thing that you do to get closer to the person actually helps you develop better empathy with that customer. And it's through that empathy that you're actually going to create a better product. It's not just about listening to the complaint. It's about developing the empathy to get underneath that emotion to figure out exactly what they really need and what they really want.
All right. Thank you so much, Jay, for that response. Thank you so much. And this essentially brings us to the end of After 5 at 5 with Jenkins. Jay, it's been a great pleasure having you on the program. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences and your stories. Much appreciated. It's going to 2 a.m. there in Singapore, so I don't take this for granted. Before I wrap up, do you have anything to say? Any last thought you want to leave with us before I wrap this up finally?
Yeah, I will just say thank you so much for having me on the show. I think it's been really valuable for me as well to hear what people are asking questions about. Thanks to everybody watching that has participated and asked all of those questions. Um, I honestly wasn't sure what to expect, but we got a really broad range of questions here, which I really appreciate. I really appreciate being able to have this conversation with you. And if I look forward to doing one of these again in the future. It was amazing.
Excellent, 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 excellent. So we will save this conversation on YouTube after now, so you can make reference to it. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming. The next After Five at 5 is happening in 2 weeks' time on the 9th of May, and my guest then will be Mike Ipoki. Mike is the CEO of Africa Context Advisory and a non-executive director in Unilever, amongst other companies. He was also the MD CEO of MTN in Ghana and MTN in Nigeria. At that time, MTN was the largest business in Nigeria outside the oil and gas. I'll also be having Dr. Alfred Musaruwa. Is the chief operating officer of Netbank, and he's based in Zimbabwe. So watch out, for these conversations. Very soon, we're going to have them even with us after 5 at 5. Also, we're going to be having Anthony Siwawa. Anthony Siwawa is the father of private equity in Southern Africa region. Follow me on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter at the Akin Monehin, and on Facebook at I am Akin Monehin to get notifications of when we have great content. Content. You will also have free access to watch other inspiring conversations even on my YouTube channel. Remember, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Thank you very much.